Alright, welcome back everyone. We are now in a phase where we are finally witnessing what's going on with Mission Impossible 7 and its box office results, and how it's really comparing to Indiana Jones 5, and how it has literally paused it or brought it to a complete halt, to the point where Disney has been forced to pull Indiana Jones 5 out of its theaters. I don't know about you guys, but for me, all of the showtimes by me have slowly been reducing every single, couple of hours. If you go throughout the next couple of days, it's near gone out of all the theaters in my area. So there's a lot of things going on right now with Indiana Jones 5, and specifically what's been happening with Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Kathleen Kennedy. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support, and let's get right into the subject, shall we? Now, we know that Phoebe Waller-Bridge contributed to a lot of the story of Indiana Jones 5. We've talked about this many times. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there have been many moments where Phoebe Waller-Bridge did do this in her career. Just to name one is Bond 25, No Time to Die. Phoebe Waller-Bridge contributed to that film, which is why some portions of that movie you may not like, and well, that's because of Phoebe Waller. Now, when you look at stuff like this specifically, of what's going on with Indy 5 right now, this is where things begin to get quite complicated. And one thing I have noticed about people like Phoebe Waller-Bridge or Brie Larson is that they may not like people like us, but they tend to actually betray the ones that they stand with eventually if their needs are not met. And this is the case here, so let's get into it. Now, with those like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Bob Iger, and Kathleen Kennedy upselling Indy 5, when it comes to Phoebe Waller, however, there is, of course, one major thing recently that got complicated in a recent development over at Lucasfilm and Disney. One major reason why, as of late, of course, actress Phoebe Waller-Bridge has been very furious with Kathleen Kennedy in a shocking turn of events, is that Kathleen decided to delete a bunch of scenes from Indy 5 some time ago that were said to be a mixture of more de-aged scenes of Harrison Ford as Indy, as well as, get this, other Helena scenes that were filmed in where a mixture of her adult version were to be actually shown, as well as her child version scenes of Helena were to be shown. Kennedy reportedly deleted an entire backstory for Helena for Indiana Jones 5 that was going to tack on an extra 10 minutes to the story that would have neared Indy 5 to almost 3 whole hours. This is the sole reason why Kennedy decided to cut down on Helena's unnecessary yet very expensive scenes, since they all involved Harrison Ford and or de-aged Ford to begin with, along, of course, with real expensive set builds that Kennedy had Disney invest into. Now, I don't know if you guys knew this too, we did touch on this about 2 days ago, is that yeah, Kennedy requested an extra $100 million to go into this film's budget. That's why it's $300 million plus, and not $200 million as originally intended. Bob Iger touched on this a couple of times as well. And a lot of that had to do with very expensive set builds. And my mind is just boggled, because when I'm seeing this movie, when you're looking at it shot by shot carefully, there's no expensive looking set builds to me. I don't know about you guys, but there's really not. You know, I don't know where they're getting that from, about how these set builds are so expensive. You know, maybe there's maybe 3, maybe 4 max, but that should not bring a movie like this, even if you have a lot of de-aged Harrison Ford, which, by the way, was more on the deepfake technology side of things. But there were scenes where they were going to do legitimate, de-aging technology that ILM has been working on that has not been unveiled yet, by the way. We talked about that too. That's going to be unveiled in future Lucasfilm projects, basically. So looking forward to that to see exactly how that's really going to compare to what we have seen already. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is causing a big grudge between Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Kathleen Kennedy. And this is at no surprise, because when you look at Kathleen Kennedy, it's all about deleting scenes that are either very expensive and or, very much, time consuming that, either Harrison Ford put a lot of effort into, or in this case, Mads Mikkelsen. We're going to be tapping into this now. Alright, so I'm not saying that I would have liked to see this scene, but it just goes to show you how easily people like Phoebe Waller-Bridge will turn against their own. Now, let's get right into this. Now, on top of this, it was best labeled as a badass moment in the film that Phoebe worked and trained hard for, which was said to be a moment in which the Helena scenes that were deleted by Kennedy that Phoebe Waller had a very big issue with Kennedy about involved Helena fighting Waller during the siege of Syracuse. This is where things get crazy. Originally, Waller was supposed to survive the crash and then proceed to fight Helena, where she would then kill him with a pistol or two. Now, on top of this, guys, let me just say one thing. This would have been technically the second time that Waller survived, and I'm glad that they did not go through with this because it would have been utterly ridiculous. Like on the train scene where he's like fighting Indy or confronting him, and that pole or that rail hits him in the head. His head should have came clean off his neck. I mean, let's be honest. Now, further, it was best labeled as a very complex scene that took a very long time to shoot. The shots of showing the crash and a burned Waller were surprisingly filmed at last minute to showcase he did indeed die in the crash. Now, this has caused some form of tension between Kennedy and Phoebe, as well as how Kennedy didn't try hard to defend Phoebe from getting fired from the Lando series by Disney. That's another reason. So, you guys may recall, if you guys have been following me here, Phoebe was fired by Disney from a handful of projects. So let's be specific here, not entirely, but she was fired by Disney by shows and projects. 4 Disney movies to be exact. One of which was going to focus on witches, another of which was going to focus on 1900s London. The other 2, we're still not quite sure what they were about. We'll talk about that once we learn more about that as the weeks roll by. And these movies, by the way, are going to be announced at both D23 this year and some of the earnings calls for 2024. But she was also fired from the Lando series because she was supposed to come back as L337. Yes, that insufferable droid from Solo: A Star Wars Story. And yes, I say insufferable because that's exactly how I felt with that droid. Nothing different than Helena, nothing different than Fleabag, and anything else that Phoebe has pretty much been in, let's be honest. So that's interesting that this is causing a lot of tension between Phoebe and Kathleen. It really is no different than how Brie Larson, really kind of turned against people like Kathleen Kennedy as well. Once they, did something that she didn't like, and that only caused problems, and that's why Brie is in a very tough spot right now with her career. Everything that she has been in lately has been tanking and not performing well at the box office, and The Marvels is going to be the absolute bomb of all bombs by Disney. 100% believe in that. And given that Bob Iger, we talked about this too, he did extend his contract until 2026. Just be aware that yes, he can be fired at any time by the board. And we talked about how the board wants to, of course, rely and see what happens with Haunted Mansion first, as well as The Marvels and Wish, on whether or not they want to truly believe in Bob Iger's efforts and his new marketing strategies. You could see an uptick in the ads for the Haunted Mansion, so I think that has a lot to do with their recent emergency meetings. But guys, drop a comment below, fill me in below what you guys all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
From night to morning.